So for the first time, we're going to talk about a documentary.
Documentary.
Okay. Errol Morris. Lot of documentaries under his belt. What about Vernon, Florida jumped out at you, made you want to pick that?
Yeah, it goes back to the World of Video days. It was one that I would hear about a lot, and I finally just took it home and just fell in love with the movie. It's, you couldn't script something like that.
No.
I have cards of quotables that are just from humans talking.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's a power to having a conversation with someone and just letting them kind of unfold all these different things about their lives. Because there's not really an uninteresting part of it. Which is maybe one of the reasons it's an hour long.
Right.
Right? You don't want to
overstay.
Right.
Right.
But I think that's part of its power. What did you think of it?
So when I first put it on, first I was, because it's on the Criterion channel, which is really nice, and all of them, and Criterion Collection. So there's a double bill box set that has Gates of Heaven and Vernon, Florida, and then they also have The Thin Blue Line on them on Criterion. But they're all on the Criterion channel.
Nice.
And when I first put it on, I saw the 61, 62 minutes, and I thought it was a mistake. I thought I put on a special feature. So I'm like, wow, it's only an hour long, weird. And I start watching it, and first I got worried because at first I thought, is he making fun of them? Is he making fun of these people? Is he showing them for us to
sort
to
of like
laugh
how
at?
Bill Maher gets with religious people. Like there was a tone of religious that was borderline.
Right. I know people, especially indie filmmakers, love the movie American Movie with the two guys trying to make them. Right. But there was a certain point when I was watching that where I'm like, it's kind of sad to just be. It seems that the filmmakers, I don't know what the tone they're trying to, are we laughing at them or with them?
Right.
So I had those concerns when it first started. But then it really does just take you under its spell of just showing you this is the town.
Right.
These are the
reason
people.
It's called Vernon, Florida,
right.
And not cast of characters,
right.
Or aren't they fun? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's it really does seem to be from the opening shot of that billowing exhaust cloud coming from that truck driving through the streets. You really get a sense. That's the first thing you see before we even talk to anyone.
Yeah, and it's such an evocative image. And yet,
that's why he's truly a filmmaker.
Yeah, it's not just a documentary, and especially a Thin Blue Line can hold its own with any police procedural thriller. It's that gripping. It's that good. But
easy place to pick up from.
Sorry guys,
All good.
Nothing ever happened.
Hold its own with any police procedure.
And with this film, and even with, have you seen Gates of Heaven?
The only other one I've seen is Fog of War.
Okay. But even Fog of War,
it's a character study.
It's cinematic.
Yeah.
So he does. He documentary is his vessel, is his genre of choice, but it's just as cinematic as any other film out there. And that's the thing with these images and just the way that he sets up the camera on these people and them just talking and telling their story. he doesn't get in the way.
Right.
He's also a documentarian. This is the only film where, I mean, I guess that's not true because The Thin Blue Line is excellent journalism as well. But this is the one film where it's just like, you know, I just want to. This is the place.
Right.
These are the people, and I just want to show you.
He's definitely in control of the narrative, I will say, and has an agenda, so to speak, because there's that dude in the beginning who's like, oh, look at the, and he tries to show him the gem, or
Right.
whatever, and he goes, look at it, and he like doesn't move the camera, like he doesn't he just lets him keep talking, right, like it's almost like I'm gonna let you do this, but I'm not that concerned with what you're showing me. I'm concerned, like I don't know. It wasn't that he was at the mercy of these people's stories. He was sort of like,
right,
you know,
and I wonder if like he didn't want to, like I remember this is kind of. Off topic, but not really. So Warren Beatty Reds. So he has those interstitial, documentary-like shots of the people against black, and they're talking. And on the DVD, there's a documentary about it, and there's like behind-the-scenes footage of him shooting that stuff. And there's one moment where one of them is talking and asks him a question, and he's like, he doesn't answer, and she's like, you're very quiet, and that's making me think that you're not liking what I'm saying. And he's like, no, you're confusing the fact that I don't want my voice on the soundtrack. I want only you. So that's what this made me think of is like, you know, I'm not here. Whatever I think about it or whatever interaction you think we could have, I'm not interested in that. I'm only interested in this is your moment, and I want to capture that.
Did you read anything about it? So check this out. So it was originally called Nub City, and it was about how there were all these people that would sever their own limbs to collect insurance money.
Wow.
In this town, and he was getting threats from the people if he released it, and so he just got rid of that part and just made it about these people.
Right. Wow.
It was just like fascinating to me.
Wow.
Like, but that it's still on the weight of these conversations. It is a very it's just a really cool look into humanity.
Right.
Right? I mean, and it's hard to even like pick a favorite because it's just like each one has its own sort of essence, right?
And you know what? And it makes you think about, you know, your childhood, like growing up in the towns that we grew up in, and like thinking about it and thinking about, well, how many people do I remember from my childhood that I interacted with that, you know, whether it's like, even like I'm thinking about the place I used to go to get my hair cut and the guy that was there, and that he was a character unto himself, but not in a big grandiose way. It's not like he had all these exciting stories and whatnot, but it was just that this was his barbershop. He took pride in doing that, and it was important to him to keep it like a old-fashioned style barbershop. So he had the music playing, the ragtag time and everything.
Right. Well, it's sort of like the three guys sitting out front of the store, which actually reminded me of Do the Right Thing. So it's like this is what these guys would do anyway, right?
Right.
So they're talking about they're debating the fine points of shotgun suicide etiquette, right? Like I'm just like, what is going on?
Right.
No, he used his toe. I mean, it's just like, whoa. And same with, you know, that one guy that was in that scene also has the whole part. He sort of seems like the town drunk, you know, but he's talking about like the brain and how it can do 5 things at once. And I mean, it's just like he would be doing that anyway, right? Like I feel like he talked to people who already want to talk.
Right.
In no conversation that was in that film did someone feel guarded or
Right.
that they were wary
Right.
of. And I don't know if that has to do with his ability to have people trust him and to forge just positive interactions with people
Yeah.
in order to get the best of them
Right.
out of them. But it really just it seemed like he just found just, I don't know if it's like 7, seems like just interesting people.
Or did he just go around the whole town and do that?
Probably.
And just,
but I
and he
mean,
just picked the
settled
right
on
one?
these,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And I'm sure that it's not like they set action. Those conversations happen, and they're like, man, everything we got was good. Like,
Right.
I guarantee there were some uninteresting sections of those
Right.
conversations, right? But editing,
Yeah.
this is such a well-edited piece.
And that's what, and especially hearing, not knowing that story about the Nub City thing, and that he is such a carefully thoughtful filmmaker in the sense that it's like, yeah, I'm going to get, there's probably tons of footage, but he had to go in and be like, no, this is the right mix.
'Cause there's a flow
These are the right people.
to the way it feels, to he alternates. It's not like he says he has, this is the section of the turkey hunter. This is, no, it like alternates between them. I mean, it really just feels like you're going from person to person throughout the town. And I mean, just the bizarre nature of that one, with the one dude who's like, this is not a turtle, it's a gopher. And you're like, what?
Right.
And then it's like his motor's slow, and it's like he's like starts like kicking him, not very hard because he's slow too, but it's just like, I don't know, man. Just man, you can't. It's just stuff that you can't. It's inspiring because it's like it makes you feel like, oh, if I took a camera and went out
Right.
in this country,
Right.
I could find people
Right.
that have their story.
And it's like every town has a flavor, and every person has their own wisdom within them. And these are not the types of things that you see all the time, especially in movies.
Right.
So that's why, and that's what kind of made me relent on my concerns early on and just be like, oh, his hand is not in this.
Right.
We're not laughing at these people. They're just human beings. And the story about the Nub City thing, like, I'm still hung up on that, is because so he had a story in mind, an agenda, and something that he wanted to tell, and then he couldn't.
Probably from a journalistic point of view,
Right.
Like, who would not be interested in that?
Right, and then he can't do that.
Right.
Right. So how many people would just be like, well, that's the story. Like, what? So now I've got nothing.
Right.
And he has the tenacity to just say, like, okay, I don't have that.
Yeah.
But maybe I have something more.
I look at it like you're about to make a dish and you realize you don't have onions.
Right.
So you're like, well, how can I use what I do have?
Right.
Well, maybe I'll use garlic in a way that makes this sauce still good. It's
can
like
step back.
it's a similar type of thing of like, well, okay, how can I still make this work? And it takes a certain eye for what's good, and to really be a keen interest in people, and not being tied to one thing. Just an openness. We've talked about that with various filmmakers before, that openness to ideas. Because, I mean, this really is one of my favorite films of all time. It's just so unique. Doesn't feel like anything else. And there's gold in what people say
Right.
on a regular basis. It makes me want to listen more, to be honest. It made me realize it's like man, I don't know if I ask enough questions, because there's gold in the answers, and it's like just sort of stimulated something in me again of rewatching it.
Right.
It's like, man, look at what you can learn about people just by letting them talk. You know.
And then just aesthetically, and I know this is, it may be horrible to say, but something about decay and impoverished towns really do look wonderful on film, and I don't know why that is. But there's something about seeing
that
this
Main
place.
Street, man, that's cinematic.
Yeah.
There's something about it that feels like it's right out of like an old novel.
And one thing that I always think about, especially with documentaries of this time, is that they are shooting on film. And right now, it's easy to take that for granted because you can just go out with a video camera and get whatever you want. But they have the, they have to worry about did I get what I think I got?
Right.
And there's no going back, right? It's not like if there was a hair on the gate, or if there was the film didn't work, or it didn't process, it didn't come out. All right, we have to go back and get that interview again. It's like, well, that's kind of not the point, right?
And I love how he handled the religious areas.
Yeah.
Because he, neither of those sections were dealt with in any sort of way of just letting these two people talk or like have their piece. I mean, obviously one was a sermon. But the first guy, the whole thing of like, what you say is that just happened, that's God, right? It even if you're not a religious person, you could be an atheist.
Right.
And to hear him say that like that doesn't feel like he's proselytizing at all. It just feels like that's his true belief.
Right.
And you respect it as such.
Right.
And I thought it was very eloquent what he said. Was that the one where he's drifting in the skiff? Man, that was cinematic. That was like the most cinematic shot in the movie.
Right.
But during the sermon, it's like this guy is a thinker, right? He's not just a priest. He realized the word therefore was used over 119 times in the book of Romans by Paul. There's got to be a reason for that. Let me look this word up. Oh, well, let me look this word up. That's a scholar, right? Anyone who's doing that is a scholar.
Right.
So it sort of lets you look at sort of much maligned in this country, depends on what side you're on, right, of the religious equation. But to watch something like this from like 38 years ago, it's really cool to see how he handles such a kind of a hot button topic, especially in the South.
Right.
I just love it. It doesn't really feel any different than the other parts.
Right.
Right?
And again, because his hand's not there. He's not in there to be like, well,
right. He's not instigating or trying to shape the narrative in any way. There really is no agenda.
It's just, this is what you think. The camera is me sitting down and just giving you the time to talk, right?
I bet you he had sessions with the editor where they have all the footage, and I mean, obviously they did this, but it's like, all right, so like, how would this flow best? Like, what works as an opening? What works? And I guess it is a little different than having a script, right? Because with a script, there's a clear plot.
Right.
There's a storyline, there's an arc, there's an ending, right? With this, it's like, well, we have all this footage. Like, how do what works best at the end? What works best here? It's really cool. It's almost like a collage. It's like you've got to take these disparate parts and like reshape them into its own piece. It's really artistic, actually.
Right. And you can think about other movies that are named after a town, right? And the town is a background to the story that they're telling. and this is kind of the same thing. The town is a character in itself, right? And these are the characters.
It's the main character, right? Yeah.
Right.
It's like the tree.
Right.
And there are all the branches, and you get to see like.
It's Altman. It's Altman. Like, you know, it's like Nashville is.
Nashville feels like a documentary,
Yeah.
right? It has that feel to it.
Right. And the thing about, you know, he had to find the story, because the story that he initially had is gone.
Well, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So it's like, if you're like, oh wait, we just spent all this money. I mean, who knows how much of a budget it was, but still, it's like you're paying people, you're going down there, right? It's like,
Right.
and time, you're losing all that time. It had to have been discouraging, because he was probably really psyched about this. What a story. Who's not going to be interested in that, right? But to have to go to a place where there's the fear of like, oh wait, maybe people won't be that interested. Because movies are sold, right? You're selling a movie to a studio, or
Right.
the idea of a movie to a studio or a producer. So it's like, does that sound like a compelling narrative to a lot of people? No. Hell no, in capital letters, right? And I think that's why it fits the mold of a back pocket film. Because it's not the banner film of Errol Morris.
Right.
It's the one where you say it and people are like, huh? Which was what made it so special for it to be handed to me. You know, and then for me to recommend it to my roommate last night, and he's texting me about it like, this is hilarious, dude. Not like, and not in a way of laughing
Right.
at the people,
Right.
but just like, you know, he said it's almost like a real version of like Reno 911. Of like this colorful cast of characters, just like, you know, like you can't script this. And
Right. And that's another thing about the way that he does it, is because his hand is not in it. It's like a Rorschach test, right? Like
Yeah.
whoever, it's on the
However
person that's
you-
watching it, right?
Right.
So some people could watch it and laugh, and another person could watch it and
Yes.
be like, "Wow, this is really depressing."
And you know, you might think you have a certain character figured out,
Right.
Based on the initial. That's why I like that he shows you one part, then he goes somewhere else, then he brings it back.
Yeah.
So that cop, at first it looks like it's like one horse town, right? And he's just like, well, don't have my radar guns getting fixed. Yeah, might have to pull some people over, blah blah blah. So your initial thought is, and this guy, he never has anything to do as a cop. He's just sitting here waiting to pull people over. And then you hear about his story about the bullet hole in the seat, and about how, because I don't know why they did it. He goes, it's like, I guess they thought they would frighten me. It's like, I don't frighten so easily. You're like, all of a sudden, it's like Charles Bronson time. You're like, wait a minute.
Right.
Like, I thought I knew this guy.
Right.
And that's what's so cool about it. And you may think you have someone figured out based on environment, and you don't. You don't know their story. You don't know what's happened to them. They could have dual parts of their nature, you know, where it seems like they're this and they're, but it's like, it forces you to really just listen and listen the way he listens.
Yeah.
Right? It's almost like you're a surrogate, like, of him, like experiencing just the stories these people have to tell.
Right.
It's really cool.
And it's kind of prescient in these times, because you do feel like, with all the stuff that's going on right now, it's
Great
like
point, man.
it's like maybe we do just have to stop and listen to each other.
You know, I will admit, like, if I see someone who has a "Make America Great Again" shirt or hat, it gets it elicits a sort of reaction internally,
Right.
based on what I feel that to represent.
Right.
And I feel like this is an interesting kind of way to say, hey, like, everyone's got a story, and maybe the way we get through all of this is to really listen to each other, and get to each other's truth, and
maybe the sentiment that they think, you know, they it's hard to say this without getting into a political, but they're wearing what that means to them, that "Make America Great." What that means to them may not be what we think
Right.
it.
They
right?
could be like, you know what? I agree with his business sense, but I don't agree with this other stuff, right? So
Right.
you really don't know, and it goes into it does tie into this. It's like you don't know any of these people's what lies at the heart of
Right.
themselves.
Right. Sometimes it's bad, but
Yeah,
sometimes
right. And
it's not.
sometimes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
That's the thing.
you know?
It's like, yeah,
But I like that for the purposes of this documentary and what it meant to him was that it was just like, oh,
you know, maybe the best thing that ever happened to him was that Nub City got
right,
canned, right?
right.
Because it's his second film. How did Gates of Heaven do? Did it go to festivals and do pretty well?
Yeah, and I think the way he usually did this was Roger Ebert really championed it, and I think Gene Siskel did as well, and I think that was like the best part of what they did was that if there was a movie that they felt the public needed to be in the public eye, and they knew it wouldn't be unless they put it there, they would do it. And Gates of Heaven was that. And I remember reading his review of it and it being like just glowing.
I'd love to watch the film and then read that. But who knows how it played out? But who knows if there wasn't like a night after he is receiving these threats, and that man, I've been there before, where you're getting threats on your life.
Mm-hmm.
It is an unpleasant like state.
Right.
It is not. It is like it upsets your sense of calm and security and containment. And it's like, who knows if he wasn't like in some motel room in the area, and just like with whatever he's doing, and he's just like, and he's just like doesn't know what to do, and he's sitting watching this footage.
Right.
And he's like, wait a minute.
Right.
Like, look at this. Look at the, I mean, it's romanticized, but it's like, or maybe he was just like, you know what? I know what to do.
Right. Right.
Who knows?
Right.
But,
and it could have been like, there's two scenarios I have in my head right now.
Yeah.
One is that either he went to the town and he was like, this is the story, this is what I want to tell. And then he just happened upon these people and these stories and he's just like, wow, like there's really, I know I'm thinking about this other thing, but man, like in the back of my mind, like it would be great to use this footage, but I know I can't because it has nothing to do with what I'm trying to tell. Right.
That may have spoken to a more like sort of Terrence Malick nature in him. Right. Than a Michael Moore. Not to compare him to Michael Moore, but that whole Michael Moore clearly has an agenda. Right. Right.
Well, and you think that like if that happened to Michael Moore, you'd be like, well, now my documentary is about how I wanted to make this documentary, and
he's sort of meta
be a
in that
threat,
regard, right? Because he's the central character. Right. There's he's in all his movies, right? Errol Morris, not in all his movies.
Right. And the other scenario I can think of is that in his state of feeling like my life is being threatened, like it's like, you know what? My revenge, my answer to this is that this is not what Vernon, Florida is about. Is not this. It's this.
Maybe it taught him something.
Maybe
it was like, you know what? Like, if I was at the point where I was selling my own severed limbs to collect insurance money, maybe I wouldn't want my story blasted across screens.
Right.
Who knows? I mean.
Right. And almost like, maybe in his heart he felt like, Vernon, Florida doesn't deserve this, doesn't deserve to be known for this.
I mean, it's a much different film.
Yeah.
Nub City, I mean, and apparently that's what it was maybe like colloquially referred to as, right? So it wasn't like he was like, but you are using it as your title, right?
Right.
So it's going to elicit a certain reaction from people. You're going to picture a nub, you're going to, right? I mean, it's like, it's just so cool the way it happened.
It does feel like it does feel like as you get through this documentary, as you get into the middle of it, and it's sucking you in, and its spell is being worked on you. there's a part of you that feels like, oh, this is kind of like his version of a love letter to this town, you know?
Yeah.
And then just saying like, this is this town, but it can be any town.
It seems unlike, granted I want to watch all his films now, but it seems unlike anything he did.
Yeah.
Everything else seems to have some sort of central subject
Right.
of what he's trying to tackle
Right.
in that documentary.
Right.
So it kind of makes it special. It's kind of like his deepest cut in the deck.
Yeah. And that it was his sophomore effort, right? And it's weird, like I went in, because Roger Ebert loved Gates of Heaven so
Did
much.
he write a
and then
review of this?
No, I couldn't. If he did, I couldn't find
He
it.
probably saw it,
Right.
I would imagine.
Right.
But
But I
it
searched
would have
and
been
I
cool
couldn't
to know
find
what
it.
he thought of it.
Yeah. Because it feels like something that he would have wanted to champion, unless for some reason he saw it and it didn't, you know.
I
Maybe
read that it did well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it critical acclaim.
Well, and again, I think he got a lot of notice for Gates of Heaven, and that at least in the world of film lovers that liked documentaries, that he got a lot of attention for it because of that.
Yeah.
I would think. But it's inspired me to kind of look back at a lot of documentaries.
Me too, man. It's a big blind spot,
Right.
in my, film watching experience.
Well, and I finally got around to watching, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but Harlan County, USA.
Never watched it.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be in the future
Cool.
somewhere, but yeah, man, I mean, they just, you think a certain way about them, and then you watch that one, and you're like, wow, this is as compelling and as, this is like a Mike Leigh film.
Right. Well, and it's similar to nonfiction books, because it's like I had a certain idea of what a nonfiction book was, and it was someone talking about something that happened that can't necessarily write well, which is ludicrous. It's like, right, I don't know why I thought that, but then I read, a couple of John Krakauer books, Into the Wild and Into Thin Air, and I was like, that's incredible.
Right.
Right, and those two books made me want to start reading nonfiction, and now I'm reading this book about Ulysses S. Grant
Right.
by Ron Chernow, and I'm like totally in it and just enthralled. So who's to, why should, and it's the same with this. It's like these are filmmakers, they have filmmaking sensibilities, they understand character depth and all these things, right?
Mm-hmm. And it's weird, and it's even harder because you get this footage and you have to hit the same points that a fiction filmmaker has to hit, and not fabricate it,
Right.
Because you can't, right? You only have the footage that you can make. I mean, obviously you can manipulate it in a certain way, but it's like I have to shoot all this footage, and then within it, find what my catalyst is, find what my big event is, find what the what's the point of no return, and what's the crisis, and all that stuff. You still have to do that, but you have to sit through hours and hours of footage to do it.
Is it Robert Flaherty, who was like the really renowned documentarian?
Yeah.
Did he make King Kong? Did he have anything to do with King Kong, or was it he worked with some of the people that I thought he came up in some of the King Kong research? Maybe not.
Robert Flaherty?
What was Robert Flaherty most known for?
The Nook of the North?
Okay, yeah. Right. Was it Chang that was by? I'd have to look to see.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, but I mean, just from that time on, I mean, there are so many to go back and watch.
Right. So you said that you saw this during the World of Video?
Mm-hmm.
Who was it that introduced you to it?
I feel like tons of people, man. Like at least 3 or 4 people.
Wow. And you just got it from there, and then you just went home and watched it?
Yeah.
Is this the second time that you've watched it for this? Yeah.
No, I rented an SD version on Amazon, and that was 55 minutes, so I wonder if the Criterion has like an extra. You said the Criterion is over an hour? I'll have to go back and see which footage I missed. I wonder if there are two different cuts. Probably. Director's cut and theatrical cut.
No, sorry. 55 minutes and 45 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty incredible that it's 55 minutes and is that compelling. Certainly doesn't feel short.
Just popped up on the cop. No, I mean, it was really good to one, to watch it, and then the treat of it being 55 minutes long is that you can digest it, you can watch it fairly quickly, but it does inspire you to go back. Like, I wanted to watch A Thin Blue Line again. I wanted to watch Gates of Heaven. I wanted to.
I think a lot of those are on IFC right now.
Yeah.
So I was looking.
Did anything else come in from your research?
Yeah. So let me see here. I love little touches like when they're talking to the guy in the beginning, and then it switches to this shot on it's like there's this truck parked, and he's kind of in the background of the shot, sitting down in his lawn chair.
Yep.
And the guy comes back to his truck, and before he gets in his truck, he hits his gloves twice on the roof of the truck. Like, this is clearly like something that he does before he gets in his truck.
Yeah.
Right. It's those little things that I remember doing Moon for the Misbegotten, where Adam, the director, was like, "Hey, so like when you sit down on his porch, like you visit him all the time, it's like, maybe like you're rich compared to, you're like kind of like a little more like pretentiously rich compared to him, but you still like to hang out with him. Like maybe you like take your hat and you like, or maybe you like kind of dust it off the seat before, or the porch before you sit down." And it's like just that kind of thing of like developing those types of things are so beneficial in recreating reality. And where do they come from? It's like Brando used to sit inside a phone booth, pretend to be on the phone, and he would like observe people. It's like, oh, and then he would do these things in movies that he watched people do, and then we watch them, and then we're like, oh man, people totally do that, right? One of those things that like captured my eye. There was a hardware store where there's like motor oil all in like the whole shop window, and then there's like a milk sign. And it just was like, is this the kind of place that sells motor oil and milk? And maybe it is, right? And I thought that was really ingenious to just have that be the and just not bring attention to it, right? There's just all these quotables, man. Yeah, I guess I won't really get into them. I do think the one part is hilarious of the turkey hunter being like, "I didn't get to use the bathroom though. I was fixing to. That's the best diarrhea medicine in the world. You hear a turkey gobbling, you forget all about diarrhea and everything." I was like, what? I mean, these types of quotes, man, you're just like, I don't know, man. I had them all written down, and I'm just going to let the viewer hear them. Because,
right.
But the fact
gems.
that I have this many written down speaks volumes about how interesting.
Because you look at it and you're like,
are.
I can't. Who could write that, right?
Yeah.
And then you think, and this is probably something about Errol Morris and why he wanted to showcase it is like, look, there's a unique poetry to these people and the way that they speak and their colloquialisms and their verve and their cadence. Like, this is.
And he did talk to almost all older people.
Yeah.
So there was so much experience in
Right.
forming all of these stories. Like none of this was all drawing from years and years of being alive. I mean, there's something to that.
And only being in that town.
Right.
Right. So they're the best people to know. Yeah.
I mean, essentially, when you're in a work of fiction, you're playing a character, right? And these are characters. I mean, you could imagine playing any number of these people because there's so much that's there. I mean, in the cadence of speech and just like the physical mannerisms and just everything about how they carry themselves, and it's just fascinating. I mean, it's incredible. Like, I'll always remember all of them because they're just so unique from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, even when they don't seem like they're backed up by the there's the guy who's like, one of those, those guys, the jeweler, when you bring them I mean, they don't even know what they're looking for. You ask them, what are you looking for? They'd go,
Right.
It's like, no,
Right.
I don't think so. Pretty sure
Right.
they know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And then there's the one guy, the earthworm guy, who's like, yeah, people write books about it. Their books are wrong. It's like, okay, all right, maybe. But it also, there's a certain mystique to some of these characters where you're like, oh, I don't know, maybe you do know more than these books.
Right.
Maybe there's something you've gleaned from experience that these books don't cover, right? Which I think Errol Morris has a respect for. I don't think he is sitting there being like, I'm just going to let these guys just,
Right.
go off about this thing.
And that's the thing. At the end of it, what you do not take away that the filmmaker is saying, look how dumb these people are.
Right, absolutely not.
And nor is he saying, look how sad these people are.
Right.
Because there's, there is a joy to this film, and it's not, it's not, oh, poor them, right?
These are
there's
really
a joy to it.
interesting people. Okay, there's a whole lot of people that aren't interesting.
Right.
And it's not them. Okay, like they got a whole lot to say. Just hearing the love that guy has for turkey hunting. I would listen to him tell stories for hours. Be like, then what happened? Yeah, tell me about this one. Like, his face lights up. In fact, all their faces lit up when they were talking about the things that are interesting to them or that they love. I mean, he found just the right people, man.
Mm-hmm. You know what else? And it also makes you think about the people that are in your orbit.
That maybe you're neglecting or taking for granted.
Right. Or that you feel like, oh, if we had more time, or if we could just sit down, like what would happen? Like what would the conversation be like?
Right.
How much more to your life could I find out about? That's not just these little glimpses here and there,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I wonder if there was any more research. Oh, I love when he's sees all the buzzards in the tree and he counts every single one. There's like 35 of them, and he counts them all.
Right.
And then he goes, 35. Well, 35th one flew. I mean, you can see that on the page in a Faulkner book.
Right.
35th one flew as that sentence, the dialogue. I mean, that's just great stuff, man. And that's not That's what's great. No one's trying to be funny. No one's trying to be anything. They're literally just being themselves.
Being themselves, yeah.
And there's something to be celebrated in that. The fact that I think that's the gift he's giving us as a filmmaker, is the recognition that if you just be yourself, there's all these things to be found in it. That it's the most important thing. He goes, listening to that gives me the turkey fever. I wish there were as many turkeys as there are buzzards. I mean, I just love it, man. Yeah.
There is a magic to watching people just be themselves and do the things that are special to them, or just, you know, things that like I remember when I was a kid, my dad would bring me to my second uncle's house, and he would make Polish guamkis. And there was a time where I had to do something for a school project, and I just wanted, you know, I wanted to record him doing that. So we went over there, and then he just did it. But it's as if like he didn't even care that the camera was there. It's not like he was showing off for it or anything.
Right.
He was just being himself and, like, you know, doing the jokes that he would do, and then just the process of him doing everything and watching him doing it. And when I was watching it back and putting it together, it was weird, because I would think like, oh, this is probably going to be boring, but then putting it all together, I'm like, wow, there really is a kind of like a soul and a magic to this, and it honors that person. And watching this, it's kind of a similar thing of it, just like, this is just them. Like, I'm not probing them with something. You're not hearing the question. You're not hearing the person instigating or, you know, trying to get at something. It's just, you know, I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna watch this person count every one of those birds, because that's who they are. That's their essence. That's their soul.
Right. And it would go against the nature of the film to be like, do we really have to listen to all 35 of these? Right. It's like the movie's only 55 minutes.
Right.
The fact that he counts 35 buzzards and it's still only 55 minutes speaks to the, you know, how much is actually in the film.
And that would be like a thing, just like, yeah, it's like, you know, I could hear him being like, yep, we absolutely do.
Yeah, right? It's to protect
like, I wish there were 35 more.
For some reason, I just thought of Wes Bentley's character in American Beauty when he's filming the bedroom, and Mina Savari thinks that he's taping her, like, dancing.
Right.
And really, he's zooming in on Thora Birch having a private moment.
Right.
Just made me think of, like, you know, the idea of, like, oh, like, there is something cinematic about filming people being themselves, talking about themselves, without any need to spruce it up or make it more palatable to the masses.
No artifice.
Right. It is what it is. How many things are that? Not a whole lot.
It's like true neorealism.
Right. It's lightning in a bottle, man. You could try to do this 100 times and still not get it.
Right.
So it sort of makes you look at what Richard Linklater did with Slacker, and Harmony Korine with Gummo, and, good Lord, Vincent Gallo with Brown Bunny, and sort of look at that as like, well, you could try to do this. And it's like, just because it's like, I don't necessarily want to see someone pump gas and then drive for 20 minutes. Right? Like, you have to be there. You have to find the thing that makes it watchable. And I think that's the lesson here is, you know, you can have these pseudo cinema verite type movies And I mean, this is similar to what Haskell Wexler did with Medium Cool.
Right.
Because he took all this real footage and then shot some scenes and then put it all together as this piece.
Right. Built an actual movie out of an actual event.
And that actually would be a cool double bill with this.
Medium Cool and
Yeah.
Vernon, Florida.
Much different films, but a similar aesthetic. Yeah. Well, this episode's only going to be 55 minutes today in honor of Vernon, Florida. No.
I don't know, it's hard because it's hard to talk about it without, you said it yourself. It's like you want the people who are led to this movie to discover it for itself and discover the magic of it and the people. So kind of talking about it takes away from that sometimes, because you want to just talk about individual scenes and like just mention the dialogue.
Right. I mean, there's a reason I stopped myself from just reading every one of those lines.
Right.
Right. Even though I love them, and I was going to try to do my best way, but even trying to imitate them felt wrong.
Right.
Because that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
They're not lines in a movie. They're things these people actually said. So I think it's important to preserve the integrity of those conversations and to let people, like you said, the Rorschach thing, let people interpret them however they will. Because different things will mean differently to different people. And I think the point is just that I think he wants us to open our eyes, because there could be a Vernon, Florida right next to us.
Right.
We could be living in it.
Has he done anything after Fog of War?
Yes, I believe so. Standard Operating Procedure, which I think actually might have been nominated for an Oscar. It at least got some acclaim. Tabloid, and then one called The Unknown Known. But, I mean, Brief History of Time, Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control, Mr. Death, those all were pretty critically acclaimed.
Yep. And Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control, and not Mr. Death, but what was the other
Brief
one?
History
Brief
of
History of
Time
Time is
Stephen
Criterion
Hawking.
as well.
Nice.
So he is there to be discovered, and it's really like, not to disparage him too much, but I mean it's kind of like anti Michael Moore. It's like it's not the documentary about, where the documentarian is front and center and shaping the narrative in front of your eyes.
I mean, it's similar to a talk show host. There are talk shows where the host is like, hey, it's my show.
Right.
I'm the one.
Right.
That's sort of how Letterman and Conan sort of feel sometimes. Whereas Tom Snyder, Charlie Rose, they want to have a good interview.
Right.
They want to ask the right questions. They're interested in the answers. And I wouldn't say that that's the case sometimes. And it's not a negative thing at all. Different things work with different formulas, right?
Right.
You play to your strengths. But I think there is something to the person who's interested in the answers. I think that creates a really cool pocket of experience for the viewer. Because if you're interested in the answers, that could lead us to be interested in the answers. And it's a cool teaching tool.
Right.
Which now I'm like excited to watch his documentaries because I just can't wait to learn about all these different things.
And there really there's something to, and it's kind of like that old school journalism thing of like, I'm not the story is the story, and I'm just going to show you the story.
I mean, that's kind of how I look at waiting tables, is like, it's not about me. I'm not like, look, experience me. What do you mean? You came out to dinner to have your conversations. I want to make it the best for you. So you do your thing. I'm not going to like interfere with that and force anything into your experience.
Right.
similar thing. It's like, no, man, preserve that experience. You don't. It sounds like I'm disparaging the alternative, the Michael Moore thing, but it's like, I guess I prefer.
Yeah.
I will say I prefer
Right.
when the documentarian does not make it about them. I think that's definitely ego-based, and if that's what they need to do, great. I mean, he went very far with it,
Well,
right?
it's hard because there, again, and it's another form of documentary, and it can be very entertaining,
Right.
and it can be very funny, and
I mean,
it can
Roger
be
and
very
Me is great.
yeah.
Classic.
So, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But when you see the alternative and the alternative works this well, you know, you can't help but favor one over the other. And
Right.
when it lines up with the way you would like to take in a story, you know. And it's the same with, you know, fictional filmmakers as well. You know, there's the filmmakers who are like, this is my movie, and I'm going to show you at every turn that it's my movie. And then there's filmmakers that are like, I'll.
They make like a different feel of movie every time.
Yeah.
There's like the only ingredients are that they know how to make films.
And again, that's kind of like an old school technique of like, you know, the John Ford, Howard Hawks method of just like, you know, my camera is invisible, I'm invisible, the story.
Yeah, and you know, I feel like there's certain filmmakers like Kurosawa and Fritz Lang who they took on each film and figured out what they needed to do in that particular film. And they had such a breadth of knowledge that they could apply different techniques, different times. Like, you know, Fritz Lang's Western might feel different than his film noir.
Right.
And same with Kurosawa. I mean, High and Low and Stray Dog don't feel like Seven Samurai.
Right. Or A Hidden Fortress.
Or Redbeard.
Yeah.
I mean, they're completely different films.
Right.
The sensibility is
Akira.
different.
Yeah.
But the cinematography is, you know what I mean, some of the best ever. I think knowing how to use your camera is a powerful thing.
The common denominator is that it's great filmmaking.
Right.
Right.
Like it's a Duke Ellington quote. There's two genres, good and bad. I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
Because by removing that enforced expectation of what to expect from something, it's like you can really enjoy what you're watching. I mean, not to go off on a tangent, but I just watched Escape from New York for the first time last night, and I was blown away.
For the first time?
Yeah.
Wow.
I had seen Escape from LA, but never Escape from New York.
Wow.
Sorry, it's blasphemous. I think it's his masterpiece, and I actually thought that it's just like there's so much working on so many different levels, and I just thought like, man, it goes against the nature of this film to try to classify it as anything, because it just is, right? I just felt like, and he's a filmmaker who can make any type of, all different styles of genres,
Right.
you know, but I thought it was really cool to see that because it was just such a cool. It made me interested in what his influences were, but anyway, that is too much of a tangent for another day.
Right.
But yeah, the idea of not necessarily limiting yourself by saying this is what this is. And I guess the fact that he's not limited by what a documentary is supposed to be. I love that. I think that's the way documentaries should be. The same way biographies shouldn't be always like, was born in 1879
Right.
in a cabin
Right.
outside Chicago. It's like, no, like it doesn't always have to be like that.
Yeah.
And I think those are the documentaries I always tried to, not this, but like those types of documentaries are the ones I tried to avoid, of just like regurgitation of information. Whereas like I want some sort of story. I want something to hook me in. And you can still be a filmmaker, even if you're not. Yeah, I don't know why I ever viewed it as anything else other than it's the same type of filmmaking,
Right.
right? I guess it is different because you're not working with actors. You're not recreating reality. You're filtering it through. I guess there is still a certain amount of control to the environment, right? And the,
Right. But I mean, well, you do. It's hard because it's like, well, no, they're not actors, but you also, the same thing that you do with any actor is like, you know, you try to create an environment for them to feel comfortable
Right.
in order for them
to be the most natural it can be.
right, to play and deliver what you need them to deliver.
Right.
And they need, you know, some, you know, how much hand are you going to have? It's like, you know, here's what I want. Here's what the documentary is about. So talk about that. Or, no, just be. What do you do? What's your day?
Right.
Show me your day.
I mean, look at Chan is Missing. I mean, there's a whole lot of that. The level of improvisation, and he was also trying to get at something too, and convey something socially, which does sort of lend an air of documentary to that film. It's almost like he fashioned this thing into a narrative.
Almost like the Haskell Wexler thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's cool.
No, I hope we can do more. You know.
Yeah.
Hope like every season we can, you know, throw a documentary in there.
That'd be nice.
You know. Same thing with other things. Like it would be nice to throw an animated film in there too, and stuff like that. But no, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for picking this because it was really good to kind of.
Happy you got to see it because I feel like it's one that, you know, unless prompted, you might not go to.
Right. Especially if even it feels like if you were to say, okay, I like Errol Morris, I want to watch other Errol Morris films, it wouldn't be the one that floats necessarily to the top, right?
And I guess that's what I love about Chan is Missing and some of these other films because, or Stranger Than Paradise, because it's not the one that you go right to. And I think, you know, the knowledgeable people that I worked with that clued me into those deeper cuts that maybe were a little more resonant or at least like harder to, that they need to be, you know, people are going to get to those big ones. They're going to gravitate there already. Right. So it's important to put people on to these lesser known works.
And, you know, and like it did with me, it's like it's certainly not the first documentary that I've seen, but it's the first one in a while where I'm like, man, I really got to watch a lot more documentaries. And it doesn't have the, you know, as much as I love Ken Burns, it can feel like a burden to get through.
Because of, it's like a slog sometimes because of the narrator and the way it's all done. It has the same cadence. It's like, you know, that's completely abandoned. This sort of makes you revisit what a documentary can be.
Can be, yeah.
So it's cool to have different, you know, different sort of maverick documentarians that are pushing the envelope of what it can mean. So
he's the 70s. He's the documentary version of a 70s filmmaker.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. Next week.
Magnificent Obsession.
Cool, which I've never seen, so.
Cool. So,
forward to it.
and you know, Douglas Sirk, I know you're a fan.
Big fan of Douglas
So
Sirk.
we get to talk about Douglas Sirk and melodrama, and really this is kind of like his first full-blown melodrama.
Cool.
And there's all the wonderfulness of that as well as the craziness of that. So we'll talk about all that stuff.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right.